Do these objects spread out by the victim remind us of anything, Watson? A thimble is located right beside one of the victim's hands, just like Chapman's sachet of pills and Stride's pastils. The head is turned towards the left. The murderer must have been on the right side of his victim. Let's look at her from the front. There is but one wound, Watson. It goes from the left side and descends in a slight oblique towards the right side. The eyelids were cut off. The cheeks were slashed to make them thinner. The nose was cut. There is but one wound, Watson. It goes from the left side and descends in a slight oblique towards the right side. There is but one wound. The cheeks were slashed to make them thinner. The main incision goes from the sternum all the way down to the groin. The murderer opened this abdomen as if it were an animal carcass. A kidney was removed. The uterus was removed. Part of this apron is missing. We will follow up on that shortly. The inside of the thighs is clean. Once again, there were no sexual relations between the victim and her murderer. These intestines were pulled out altogether to grant access to the abdomen.
My goodness, Holmes, it was a slaughter.
Understand, Watson, that our killer had neither the time nor the conditions to bother with the niceties. He had no more than 7 or 8 minutes at most to kill the woman, open her up, and all the while in total darkness.
Holmes, it's a woman, a poor victim you're talking about.
Consider all the time this man lost and the risks that he actually took by cutting the victim's face and the lower abdomen in around 20 precise spots, especially the lungs and the liver. These attacks, which I considered gratuitous, are in fact nothing of the sort and have as much sense as the removal of the organs. Watson, we must now consult our timeline. We began in Dutfield's yard, but this time we will try to recreate the actions of certain people, in this case those of the 2 policemen. 1:30 a.m. P.C. Watkins didn't see the corpse while on his rounds. If P.C. Watkins did his rounds properly, and there is no reason to doubt this was the case, as he discovered the corpse a quarter of an hour later, the murder hadn't yet taken place, and there was no one in Mitre Square, unless they were hidden among the shadows. Enter Mitre Square via Mitre Street, Watson, and stop and try to see me with the lantern. I will be where poor Edow's corpse was.
I have no reason to go that way. I see you, Holmes.
Perfect, Watson. Let's look at our timeline, Watson. Very good, Watson. Thus we can categorically state that the murder had not yet occurred at 1:30. 1:35 a.m. A man and a woman are arguing at the entrance of Church Passage. The man came from Aldgate. 1:42 a.m. PC Harvey arrives in Mitre Square. It should be noted, Watson, that the constable didn't enter Mitre Square. He could not have seen the corpse lying on the ground. But would he have been able to see a man sitting or standing? Go to the Church Passage entrance, then come back and try to see me while holding your lantern. I will stay at the spot where the victim was discovered.
I see you, Holmes.
You had to proceed into the square in order to see me, something Harvey didn't do. It is possible that the killer was still there. 1:42 a.m. PC Harvey arrives at Mitre Square but does not go in. The murderer may well have still been there. "1:44 a.m. The body is discovered. Let's put the murder of poor Eddowes on the timeline, Watson. "1:35 and 1:42 a.m. The murder would appear to have taken place between these times, that is to say, within 7 minutes.
Agreed, Holmes. But does this really prove that our killer had the time to perpetrate these two murders?
Let's look at our timeline, Watson. There, Watson, we are now certain that the murderer really had the time to commit these two murders.
Incredible!
Let's look at our deduction board, Watson.
This spot is making me nauseous. Can we not head back, Holmes?
We certainly can't, Watson. We have one final point to address. Do you remember the piece of white apron that was missing just now? It was found just a few steps away from here, at the entrance of a building. That's where we must go. Let's go! There's the spot, Watson. By night, Goulston Street is deathly silent, which will permit us to carry out a fair few experiments. Let's find the entrance where the piece of the victim's apron and the mysterious chalk message were found. There's the spot where the apron and the message were found by PC Long. Now, let's recreate the scene. Remember, Watson, it was raining that night. Find me something with which to mimic raindrops hitting this wall while I write something with my chalk.
The Jews are not the men that will be blamed for nothing. But what does it mean?
Have you found something for us to pour water from, Watson?
Find a container and some water. Let me remind you that it's night time and the street is deserted, Holmes. That may come in handy, who knows? A watering can, that's what I need, but I can't reach it. An old wooden pole. The merchant probably threw it out. That may come in handy, who knows? The Jews are not...
Have you found something for us to pour water from, Watson?
Yes, I have, Holmes.
If this message were written by the killer, then it would have been lying in this entrance for up to 35 minutes before being discovered. Let's find out in what state it must have been. This message could not have withstood an entire night in the rain. During the investigations carried out on the night of the double murder, PC Hulse inspected the entrances of this street around 2:20 a.m. and confirmed to have seen nothing out of the ordinary. At 2:55 a.m., 35 minutes later, PC Long found Catherine Edow's piece of apron and the message in chalk. This message would not have withstood a whole night in the rain, as had I continued to water it for a little longer, I would certainly have erased it. It was written, therefore, at the moment when the piece of apron was dumped. This substantiates PC Hulse's statement, which stated he had seen neither of these during his rounds. After its discovery, it was guarded and protected from the rain, which was subsiding, which explains why it was still legible when it was erased at 5:30. My dear Watson, when you met P.C. Smith on his rounds in the street, where was he? On the pavement or in the middle of the road?
In the middle of the road, Holmes, without a shadow of a doubt.
Good. You will go down the street with your lantern as if you were a policeman on patrol, using Smith's position as a guide. As soon as you see the entrance where I used the watering can, tell me if you see anything.
There, Holmes. From here, I can see something written.
Can you read it?
No.
Do you see the white rag, Watson?
I see something on the ground, but I'm not sure if it's what you were talking about.
P.C. Long, who found the piece of apron, was examining the interior of the entrances, and yet nobody would have predicted that this piece of material would be discovered on the very night of the murder by a policeman on patrol.
What are you trying to get at, Holmes?
Let's look at this message on the wall, Watson. The Jews are not the men that will be blamed for nothing. In other words, the Jews were possibly blamed for nothing, but that will no longer be the case. Reading this message naturally begs one question. What would that be, Watson?
Why?
Indeed, Watson, why? For what reason would one have the right to blame the Jews in the future? Remember, Liz Stride was killed near a club for socialist Jews, Eddowes not far from a synagogue and the Imperial Club, and finally, this piece of apron dropped here. This building is occupied by Jewish families. The killer really did go out of his way to incriminate the Jews living in the area.
It's a bit obvious, Holmes.
Yes, but with the rumors, Watson, the author of this message would have received a response to his strategy.
You are right, Holmes. So perhaps it's a good thing this message was erased.
Whoever took the decision to do this is a man of great wisdom and courage. Let's return to Baker Street, Watson. I have some pipes to smoke to help me think more clearly.
Let's go back to Baker Street. Home, sweet home. I had nightmares all night, Holmes. As for you, I bet you didn't get a wink of sleep, did you? It's this chalk message business, isn't it?
Among other things.
And this lunatic is still running free. If only we knew what he looked like.
But we do know, Watson. We have a fairly accurate description.
I must have missed an episode of your adventures, Holmes. Not only have I heard you discredit the value of our eyewitnesses, but the few descriptions we do have don't seem to correspond.
An inaccurate account can regain its value if we can discover why and to what extent the truth must be rewritten. We've learned a great many things tonight, and I'm able to tell you what our man looks like.
Really?
Yes, and we're going to need a few things, Watson. Find me 3 mannequins, my worker's costume, my 3 full wigs, one of your worn garments, yes, that can be used for the workman's outfit, and one of your old suits. Oh, and my deer stalker, the one I never wear, but everyone seems to think I wear day and night.
A wig. This will come in handy.
Let's try to recreate the profile of the men seen by our three witnesses.